I've got my armature all put together, just enough tape to hold all the sides in place. So I'm ready to go on to the next step, which is adding the plaster gauze to cover the whole cardboard form. So first you need to set up your workspace. All I did here was to take a paper grocery bag and rip it open and lay it flat as my work surface. Working with the plaster gauze is messy. You can see all the dust it's made just laying here, and I haven't even cut it yet. So you definitely want to cover your workspace with newspaper or something else to protect it and catch the mess. It's really easy if you have paper that when you're totally done, you can just throw that paper away. You're also going to need a bowl for water, and I have the same theory on that. It's great if you can use something that's disposable, like even the cover of a styrofoam to-go container can hold water, and then when you get totally finished with all the plaster parts, you can just toss it in the garbage and not have to worry about cleaning it. So you want to keep all of the plaster gauze pieces dry until you are ready to use them. So that is something to keep in mind. Mine happens to be in 2 parts already. I'm just going to take all this extra and set it off to the side. I want to have a whole bunch of pieces pre-cut so they're ready to use before I start getting my hands wet. The material comes in this 6-inch wide form. Nice large strips, a couple inches wide and all the way across, will work well for you for most of your form. If you have skinnier parts, if you have holes that go through, if you have curved parts, then you might not know or not want all of them to be this big, but it's the most useful size in my book. So I'm going to have a whole bunch of pieces ready to go that are 2 inches wide or so. I am going to show you how to get inside this hole in the A. So I'm going to have just a few for that are not as long and not as wide. So like I said, trying to take care that my extra stock of plaster is not in a spot where I'm going to drip water on it while I'm working. Actually, I kind of guessed making the kits how much plaster gauze you would need. If you're able to save the extra stuff and return it, that would be great. As a material, the plaster gauze is kind of expensive as project materials go for us. So we don't want to waste it and throw it away for no reason. Okay, so a lot of times the tendency is to want to just lay that strip right down the center of the side. But what's smarter, so I'm going to dip it so it's wet and then bring it over. What's smarter is to make each strip wrap around one of your seams, because in that way you are making the whole form of the sculpture stronger. You're reinforcing all the corners. So instead of going down the center of that side, if I can use 2 pieces and wrap them around the corner, it's better. Then you'll see how I'm rubbing my wet fingers over the gauze material. So if you're doing a good job of smoothing that out while it's wet, the plaster should be filling in all the texture of the gauze fabric, and you're trying to create a nice smooth surface for yourself to paint on later. So I'm going to slide this one down. As you're applying pieces, you want them to overlap with each other and connect. But in this case, because the cardboard armature is becoming a permanent part of the construction, you really only need to just cover the cardboard. There's not much point in trying to build up like 2 or 3 layers, it's really not needed. You're just trying to end up with a nice, neat, smooth surface to decorate. And so each different part, just continuing to see where I can overlap corners and to smooth it out as I go. Once it dries, it's set. If I'm sloppy and I leave it sitting with ends of strips sticking out, they're going to get hard in that position, and then you're going to be stuck with it being lumpy. So you need to pay attention as you go. So here's my tip for getting into small spaces, if you have any. I have a smaller piece, and I'm getting it wet the same way. I want to let gravity help me a little bit. I'm going to let the end of that strip just drop down into the hole as much as it's willing to go. And then I'll make the rest of it smooth out here on the outside. Ideally, even in that opening, you're covering all of the cardboard by the time you're done. But I can definitely try and get like halfway across from this side and then turn it over and try to get halfway across from the opposite side so that they meet in the middle and all the cardboard is covered. For this project, the plan is to paint with watercolor and to possibly create details with by drawing onto it with Sharpie marker. And so what I found is that the surface of the dry plaster reacts very much like watercolor paper would. That it absorbs the paint and it has a little bit of texture, and I think it's going to work very well for us. So that is pretty much the entire lesson for plaster application. You're just going to keep going, remembering to turn it all around, look at it from the bottom, look at it from the sides. You're trying to cover every bit of the cardboard, and when you go to turn it in for this assignment, you need to take a few different views in your photos, like show me one side and the front, and then show me the opposite side and the back, so that I can see that, yes, indeed, you have covered every bit of the armature with the plaster, and I can get an idea of whether you succeeded in getting it smooth. That's all there is to it. Just popping back to show you the finished product. So all sides are actually covered in white now. If you see bare spots in the cardboard peeking through, you should try to cover them. It's gooey and wet all over. I need to find a safe place for it to dry. I want to be sure if I saw any more spots that still looked holy from the gauze that I run my wet fingers over them while my fingers are still wet and I still have my water out. And then you're going to call it finished. I would let it dry before you take the photos, but it's up to you. And you definitely need it to dry 100% before you think about painting or drawing on it. So find a safe spot for it to sit and give it overnight before you work on it anymore. Thanks.